If you are hearing this, do not go looking for Blackwell Museum. That is not a warning meant to sound dramatic. It is practical advice, the kind posted beside electrical panels and chemical sinks. Blackwell has no ticket desk, no website, no donor plaques, and no address that stays printed on paper for more than a few hours. Search maps, and you will find a parking lot. Search harder, and you may find a funeral home that burned down in 1974. I worked there for 11 months. My name is Elias Vane. I was a night preservation officer, which meant I walked locked corridors with a flashlight, checked seals, logged temperature shifts, and pretended the things behind glass were only objects. Before my first shift, I signed 6 non-disclosure agreements, 2 liability waivers, and 1 document I was not allowed to read after signing. I am breaking all of them now. 3 nights ago, Exhibit 9 moved. Not fell, not shifted from vibration. Moved. 1 brass finger lifted from its little wooden desk and pointed toward the staff exit. Everyone who said they did not see it is gone. Everyone who reported it is dead. I have the tape running. I was not a curator. Curators believe objects can be understood if you label them carefully enough. I had learned long before Blackwell that paper only makes disasters look obedient. I spent 6 years as a military archivist, cataloging battlefield reports that arrived smelling of diesel, rain, and panic. My job was to preserve facts after people were done dying around them. That was why Blackwell found me, or that was what I told myself. My sister Mara had disappeared 8 months earlier while researching what she called industrial accident relics, objects recovered from factories, mines, hospitals, places where official explanations sounded rehearsed. The last message she left me said, "Eli, some museums do not display history, they quarantine it." Then Blackwell called. They offered more money than I had ever seen, access to restricted files, and most importantly, answers about Mara. In return, I followed rules. I checked humidity gauges. I reviewed camera logs. I photographed wax seals on locked cases. I marked incidents with clean little codes: condensation, vibration, unauthorized sound. For months, the work felt almost sane. Then Exhibit 9 twitched, and every ordinary duty became evidence that the museum had been waiting for me all along. Blackwell's public face, if it had one, would have looked like any archive basement. Concrete floors, humming vents, pale lights that made everyone look recently ill. The galleries were below ground, arranged in numbered rooms behind pressure doors. Nothing was displayed for admiration. Everything was displayed because someone had died near it twice. On my first week, Dr. Halden walked me past a silver comb sealed in acrylic. "Do not touch your hair within 6 feet," he said. The previous handler had scratched until his scalp came away under his fingernails. In Gallery 2, a black rotary telephone sat beneath a glass dome. It only rang from funerals that had not happened yet. Staff were forbidden to answer, but someone always logged the names afterward. Gallery 6 held a child's snow globe recovered from 6 drownings in 4 states. Shake it, and the little painted house inside filled with water. Then came Room 9. No other exhibit shared its space. Behind 3 layers of glass sat a brass and walnut automaton at a clerk's desk, its porcelain face tilted politely downward, one hand resting over an open ledger. The placard beneath it held 1 sentence: "Never let it finish writing." Every night officer at Blackwell carried the manual. It was a 3-ring binder, gray, water-resistant, and heavier than any book of rules had a right to be. Mine was clipped to a chain beside my radio, as if the museum expected me to drop one before the other. On the cover, in plain black type, it said Night Preservation Procedures, Revision 41. No one called it that. We called it the obituary. The first page explained that every rule existed because a previous employee, contractor, visitor, or unauthorized intruder had created the need for it. Some lines were written like normal workplace policy: maintain visual contact with open cases during seal inspection, record humidity deviations within 90 seconds. Others had the calm madness of instructions left beside a sleeping animal. Never refer to an exhibit by nickname while inside its gallery. Never correct a log entry you do not remember writing. If paper turns in Gallery C, leave before the 2nd page. Do not run unless your reflection runs first. Dr. Halden reviewed the binder with me during orientation in his soft, patient voice. He had the kind of composure people mistake for kindness until they notice it never changes. When we reached Exhibit 9, his thumb paused on a ragged gap in the section. 4 pages had been torn out so neatly that thin white teeth remained along the rings. What happened to those? I asked. Obsolete material, Halden said. Obsolete how? He looked at the glass wall of room 9, where the automaton sat with its pen lifted above the ledger. Inactive exhibits don't require full procedure. That should have reassured me. Instead, I kept staring at those torn edges, because someone had removed the rules but left the warnings before and after them, and both remaining pages ended with the same sentence. If Exhibit 9 resumes motion, do not acknowledge the first movement. The night staff at Blackwell was small enough that silence became a coworker. There were 4 of us most nights, 5 if you counted the building, which I did. Dr. Victor Halden supervised from the control office, where 6 monitors reflected in his glasses and made his eyes look duplicated. He never raised his voice. He never hurried. Even when alarms went off, he spoke as if he were guiding children through a museum tour. Procedure keeps panic from becoming evidence, he liked to say. Priya Sen sat 2 desks over security analyst, former casino surveillance tech, and the only person I trusted to tell me when something was wrong. Priya believed cameras more than memory. She kept hard drives labeled by date, cross-checked reflections, and drank coffee so bitter it smelled burnt before it cooled. People lie, she told me once. Footage only lies when something teaches it how. Then there was Amos Reed. Amos had worked conservation before my sister was born. He wore cotton gloves everywhere, even in the break room, and smelled of varnish and old tobacco. He could repair cracked ivory, stabilize mold-eaten paper, and identify 19th century adhesives by touch. But he would not face room 9. If his route brought him near that corridor, he turned his shoulders away from the glass like a man passing a grave he had not forgiven. The others joked about it. Priya called him superstitious. Halden called him experienced. Amos only smiled without showing teeth. Owen night, while we restocked sealant in Gallery B, I asked him whether Exhibit 9 had ever been dangerous to look at. His hand froze over the supply cart. Dead exhibits don't stay dead, he whispered. Then he looked past me, toward the corridor I could not see. They wait for someone familiar. I found the first history of Exhibit 9 by accident, which is how Blackwell preferred discoveries to happen. The restricted archive sat below Gallery C behind a keypad door that changed its code every Monday. I was sent there to retrieve mold reports for a cracked baptismal font that had drowned 3 priests without holding water. On the return cart, beneath folders labeled harmless, I noticed a brown envelope marked Widow's Clerk. I should have left it alone. Instead, I opened it between shelves of dead paperwork and breathed dust that smelled of pennies. The automaton had been built in 1889 for a man named Abner Hollis, a funeral accountant in Leeds. Hollis believed grief was not an emotion but a balance sheet. Every coffin, hymn, debt, inheritance, and apology belonged in columns. His machine was designed to assist with accounts during wakes, writing names in copperplate script, while mourners paid what they owed. Then it began writing early. First came dates, then causes, then debts no living person remembered incurring. A widow complained that the machine had listed her husband's burial expenses 2 days before his mill accident. A child saw his own name entered beneath, uncollected. By 1891, 27 mourners were found inside Hollis's office, seated in rows beside filing cabinets, hands folded, eyelids pinned open with brass clips. Each body had a numbered tab tied around one toe. Blackwell acquired the Clerk after that. The final page in the folder was a motion log. Most entries read inactive, inactive, inactive year after year, a century of stillness reduced to ink. Then one line broke the pattern, the 14th of October 2016 2:13. Right index finger elevated. Ledger opened without contact. That was the night Mara disappeared. And beside the entry, someone had written Mara's name in red pencil. The first time Exhibit 9 wrote for me, the museum was quiet enough to hear the lights warming in their fixtures. It was 2:13 in the morning. I know that because every night officer checks room 9 at 2:13, not 2:12, not 2:14. The manual never explained why, and by then I had learned that unexplained rules were usually the honest ones. I stood outside the triple glass with my flashlight angled down, careful not to catch my reflection beside the automaton's face. The clerk sat exactly as it always had, brass shoulders bowed, porcelain chin lowered, one delicate hand resting beside the open ledger. Then I saw the ink. A wet bead trembled at the tip of its pen. It was black, glossy, fresh, inside a sealed case, on a desk no one had opened in 38 years. I told myself it was condensation, a leaking cartridge, a prank by Priya maybe, though she hated jokes that created paperwork. I leaned closer. The clerk's right index finger had lifted from the desk. It pointed at a new line written across the ledger in beautiful slanted script. Priya Sen, cranial fracture, Gallery B service stairs. My throat tightened so sharply I had to swallow twice before my radio clicked. Elias? Priya's voice crackled through static. Are you near Gallery B? I stared at the words. Number Y. A pause, then the sound of her breathing, thin and controlled. Because my board says your badge, just open the service stairwell. The glass fogged once, as if something inside had exhaled against it. Behind me, far down the corridor where Gallery B waited in the dark, a metal door gave one slow, careful creak. And from Priya's radio, not mine, I heard my own voice whisper, "Come down." Rule 12 was printed in red. Do not act upon impossible log entries. Beneath it, in smaller type, someone had added the reason. Intervention may complete uncertain events. I understood the logic. Blackwell did not assume every anomaly was a prediction. Some were invitations. Some were traps wearing the shape of information. If an object wrote that a man would burn in room 4, and he ran there carrying a fire extinguisher, maybe the object had not seen the future. Maybe it had simply learned how to make him arrive. But Priya was alive. That was the thought that overruled training, fear, and every signature beneath Blackwell's warnings. Priya was alive, close enough to answer, and whatever waited in Gallery B had my voice. I ran. The corridor lights blinked from white to amber as I passed each threshold. Somewhere behind me, an alarm began its 3-note chime, not urgent, not human, just a reminder that procedure was being damaged. Priya, stop moving, I said into the radio. I am not moving, she answered. Elias, I am at the stairs. I reached the service door as she stepped onto the landing below. Above her, a ceiling panel hung open by one bent screw. I did not think. I grabbed the back of her jacket and dragged her against the wall. The panel dropped where her head had been. It hit the stairs with a sound like a butcher's block. Priya stared at it, then at me. Her face had gone gray except for one line of blood where the falling metal had kissed her cheek. We need to call Halden, she whispered. I looked back toward room 9. Through 3 layers of glass, the ledger page had turned. The new line was wet. Priya Sen, respiratory failure. Archive cold room. Priya did not scream when she saw the second line. That worried me more than screaming would have. She stared through the glass, lips parted. One hand pressed to the cut on her cheek. Then she wiped the blood on her sleeve, pulled out her access card and said, "Control room." Now, we ran the footage back on her station with the sound muted. Gallery B appeared in 4 angles: service stairs, landing, ceiling, door. At 2011, the panel was secure. At 2012, the first screw turned half a rotation. No hand touched it. At 2:13, the second screw began moving, slowly, patiently, like someone using an invisible screwdriver. Priya zoomed until the image broke into pixels. Could be magnetic interference, I said, because someone had to say something stupid and scientific. She shook her head. Watch the reflection. In the polished handrail, I saw room 9 behind us, though it was nowhere near that hallway. The automaton sat still. Its head remained lowered. Its pen did not move. but reflected in the glass around it were hands, not one pair, several, pale shapes layered over each other, hovering above the ledger like clerks, waiting to take dictation. Priya closed the clip. "I have seen those before," she said. Before I could ask when, Dr. Halden entered without knocking. His tie was perfectly straight. His expression did not change when Priya showed him the footage or when I told him the ledger had updated. "Neither of you will act on further entries," he said. "You will document nothing until morning review." "Priya's name is in there," I said. Halden looked at me for 1 second too long. Then he said, "The ledger contains many names." He never asked which one. And that was when I understood he had already known the answer. I found Amos in the archive stacks after Halden sent us back to our posts. Or rather, Amos found me. I was kneeling beside a locked cabinet with Mara's name in my head and Priya's next death in my pocket, trying keys I had no permission to carry. The archive smelled colder than the rest of Blackwell, all paper dust and disinfectant, with shelves packed so tightly they seemed to lean inward when I breathed. "You are louder than guilt," Amos said behind me. I nearly dropped the ring of keys. He stood between 2 rolling stacks, cotton gloves folded over one another, face yellow under the security light. For a moment, I expected him to call Halden. Instead, he looked at the cabinet number and sighed. "Exhibit 9, he asked. I said nothing. "That thing is not haunted, Elias. People like Halden prefer that word because it makes the problem sound sentimental." "What is it then?" Amos glanced toward the ceiling camera. Its red light blinked once, then stayed dark. "Accounting intelligence," he whispered. "Maybe older than the machine. The automaton is only a body it found useful. It thinks in columns, witnesses, signatures, locations. Bureaucracy is its nervous system." I thought of the ledger correcting Priya's death. "It can't kill just because it wants to," he continued. "It needs a name, it needs a place, it needs the event witnessed, logged, or acknowledged. Without records, it fumbles. With records, it edits." My stomach turned. "All our reports," I said. "The cameras, the incident codes." "And every form you signed before your first shift," Amos said quietly here. Amos nodded, and for the first time since I met him, he looked directly at me. "We did not build a cage," he said. "We built it a filing system." Amos did not open the locked cabinet. He reached beneath the lowest shelf instead, where a strip of loose metal hid a flat folder wrapped in gray archival cloth. The label had been typed, then crossed out so many times the paper looked bruised. Mara Vane. For a few seconds I could not touch it. My sister's name had weight in that room. It pressed against my ribs harder than grief usually did, because grief belongs to the past, and this felt horribly present. Amos placed the folder in my hands. "Read only what you must," he said. Most of the report was black ink, whole paragraphs swallowed, dates removed, witness names erased. The official summary stated that Mara Vane had never been employed, contracted, admitted, or processed by Blackwell Museum. Then I turned the page and found her badge number. It was printed cleanly beneath the redactions, formatted exactly like mine. Below that was a photograph. At first my mind refused to understand it. Mara's hand was pressed flat against glass, fingers spread, palm pale under fluorescent light. On the other side of the glass, reflected faintly, I saw the little clerk's desk and the open ledger. The photo had been taken from inside Exhibit 9's case. I stopped breathing. "She was in there," I said. Amos looked away. "No," he whispered. "Part of her was filed there." The folder slipped in my hands. Suddenly the job offer, the money, the promised answers, even Halden's careful sympathy, rearranged themselves into something colder. The folder had not been hidden from Halden. It had been hidden for him instead. They had not hired me because I could help find Mara. They had hired me because Exhibit 9 knew her name, and maybe through her, it had been waiting to learn mine. I found Halden in the control office watching room 9. The same image repeated from different angles. The automaton seated, ledger open, porcelain face lowered like a penitent clerk. Priya stood behind me with one hand on her radio and the other near the fire alarm pole. Amos remained in the doorway, holding Mara's folder. Halden did not turn when I entered. "How much did Amos tell you?" he asked. "Enough to know you hired me for my last name." At that, he finally looked at me, not guilty, not surprised, only disappointed, as if I had solved a puzzle too early and spoiled the lesson. "Containment is a comforting word," he said. "It helps donors sleep. Blackwell does not merely store dangerous objects. We study selection, preference, appetite, why one person dies and another walks past untouched. Mara was not an experiment." "No," Halden said softly. "She was an interruption." I stepped toward him, but Priya caught my sleeve. He continued, calm as ever. "After your sister vanished, Exhibit 9 ceased meaningful activity. It had lost its blood-adjacent witness. Family proximity matters to it. Names echo through relation. We needed to know whether that pathway could be restored under controlled observation. You used me as bait." We offered answers. The cruelty was not in his words. It was in how honestly he seemed to believe that made a difference. Then every monitor blinked. The museum lights dropped to emergency red. Somewhere above us, metal shutters slammed down one after another. Ceiling galleries, stairwells, offices, exits. Priya swore and lunged for her console. But the keys clicked uselessly beneath her fingers. The public address system crackled awake. A woman's recorded voice began reading names in alphabetical order. The first was Amos Reed. The second was Priya Sen. The third was mine. The voice over the speakers was not frightened. That made it worse. It belonged to the same woman who announced fire drills and elevator maintenance during training videos. Clean and patient, with the flat kindness of someone reading museum hours to school children. Amos Reed, Gallery C, cardiac rupture. Amos closed his eyes. A lock clicked somewhere beyond the control office. Then another, on Priya's monitor. Gallery C's east door turned green. "No," Priya said. She typed an override command. The system rejected it before she finished. Across the screen, her words rearranged themselves into cursive black letters. Correction received. From room 9, the camera showed Exhibit 9's ledger turning a page by itself. "Priya Sen," the speakers continued. "Archive cold room respiratory failure. The door behind us unlocked. Cold air breathed through the crack." Priya slammed her palm against the console, opening administrator panels I had never seen. She moved fast, professional, furious, calling up emergency maps, shutter controls, power routes. Every command appeared on screen for half a second, then softened, darkened, and became handwriting. "Denied," filed. "Elias Vane," the voice said. I could not hear the rest over the sudden pounding in my ears. The building responded anyway. Hallway lights illuminated one by one, not toward the exit, but deeper into the museum, drawing a path in red. Doors opened with polite little chimes. Others sealed with hydraulic groans. It was not chaos. Chaos would have been comforting. This had order. The museum was sorting us. Holden backed toward the private elevator, his calm finally cracking at the edges. Amos whispered a prayer without moving his lips. Priya pulled a drive from her terminal and shoved it into my hand. "If the system is writing," she said. We cut off its paper. On the monitor, Exhibit 9 lifted its pen. The ledger waited for us. We left the control office through the only door the building had decided to give us. The red path led away from the server room first. Blackwell never took you directly anywhere once it wanted something. Priya kept one hand on the wall, counting turns under her breath, forcing the museum back into geometry. "Maintenance access is through storage," she said. "Then electrical, then servers." The storage door opened before her badge touched the scanner. Inside was the room of unclaimed things. No placards, no glass. Just steel shelves stretching into darkness, stacked with objects that had not yet earned numbers. Wedding rings in evidence bags. House keys on yellow tags. Eyeglasses with cracked lenses. Children's toys sealed in plastic tubs. A lipstick tube. A metronome. A row of porcelain dogs facing the wall. Every item looked ordinary enough to pocket by mistake. That was the worst part. Halfway down the aisle, my flashlight caught a cassette case balanced on an empty shelf. Someone had labeled it in black marker, Mara Vane exit interview. I stopped so hard Priya bumped into my shoulder. No, she said immediately. I had already reached for it. A shape moved behind the shelf. Amos stepped out, gripping his side, cotton gloves dark with blood. His face looked older than it had 10 minutes earlier, as if the museum had taken payment in years. Do not play that, he whispered. What is on it? I asked. Something they buried Holden. Blackwell, he said. His voice cracked on the word. Not the clerk, understand that. Elias, some lies in this place are human. The speakers crackled above us, but no name came through. Only Mara's voice, faint and warped, saying from the cassette in my hand, a lie if they gave you this, I am being used. Priya found an old tape deck on the lower shelf, half buried under cords and evidence bags. Neither of us spoke while she loaded the cassette. Amos leaned against the shelves, bleeding through his gloves, shaking his head like he could still stop history by refusing to watch it. The tape hissed. Then Mara breathed my name. Not clearly, not like a message meant for comfort. It sounded close to her mouth and far from the room, as if she had recorded it from inside a wall. If this is exit documentation, she whispered, then I am not exiting. A scrape followed, metal on glass. Someone in the background asked her to continue for the record. I recognized Holden's voice, younger but already careful. Mara laughed once without humor. You keep calling it a collector, she said. It does not collect bodies. Bodies are receipts. It wants witnesses. It files them somewhere else. The tape warbled. For 2 seconds, I heard paper turning by the hundreds. There is an office under the museum, Mara continued. Not a room, a function, a place where deaths are arranged before the world receives them. Exhibit 9 is not the thing in charge, it is the clerk at the window. Priya's hand tightened around the player. On the shelves around us, small objects began clicking softly in their bags. Rings tapping plastic, keys answering keys. The porcelain dogs turned one head at a time toward the sound of my sister's voice. Mara started crying, but she kept talking. They made me sign because it needed permission in a shape people understand. A long silence opened on the tape. Then, my sister whispered, close to the microphone, if Eli comes here, do not let him sign. The cassette stopped. Above us, a printer began working. I knew what the printer was producing before Priya tore the page free. Not because I saw it clearly, because my hand had started to ache where I had signed my onboarding packet 11 months earlier. 3 copies, blue ink, initial every paragraph. Holden standing beside me with that gentle administrative patience, saying, standard liability architecture, Elias, nothing you have not seen before. There had been one page I did not read. I remembered it now with the cruel precision of panic. Cream paper, thin margins. A seal embossed so faintly it looked like water damage. Holden had covered the heading with his sleeve while pointing to the signature line. Just acknowledgement of custodial boundaries, he had said. We are already late for orientation. I had signed because I wanted Mara's file, because I was tired, because people in suits make evil sound like paperwork if they speak softly enough. Priya shoved the printed scan against my chest. Authorized consent, posthumous custodial transfer. Below it was my signature. The room seemed to tilt. Around us, the unclaimed objects had gone still, as if listening. Amos made a sound low in his throat, not quite a groan, not quite an apology. It has your name, Priya said, your workplace, your witnessed contact, your signed consent. And Mara, Amos whispered, blood, adjacent chain. From the hallway came the slow, dry flutter of turning pages. We moved to the nearest monitor. Room 9 filled the screen. The clerk sat behind glass, pen upright, porcelain face bowed. Its hand began to write. Elias Vane. My name appeared black and wet. The pen continued. Death by. Then it stopped. The tip hovered above the page, trembling, waiting for the rest of me to answer. Somewhere behind the glass, I heard Mara begin to sob my name. Holden ran the moment he understood the page had stalled. For the first time since I met him, he moved without dignity. He shoved past Priya, slipped on Amos's blood, and clawed his way toward the director's elevator at the end of the storage hall. Its brass doors were opening, though no one had called it. "Victor," Amos said. Halden did not stop. Amos lifted the fire axe from its wall cradle with both hands. He looked too old to hold it, too wounded to stand, but when Halden reached the elevator, Amos stepped between him and the doors. "You do not get to leave another Vane behind," he said. Halden's calm finally broke. "You sentimental old fool. Do you know what this proves? Controlled reactivation. Familial linkage. Consent architecture. They will put my name on the East Wing." He tried to push past. Amos swung the axe, not at Halden, but into the elevator panel. Sparks spat. The doors shuddered. Halden grabbed Amos's coat. They went down hard against a shelf, and something inside Halden's own coat tore with a papery rip. White pages spilled from the lining. I saw the same gray headers as the night manual, Exhibit 9, Emergency Addendum. Missing pages folded and stitched inside his jacket like contraband skin. Priya snatched one up and read fast, her voice shaking. "Completion requires verbal or written acknowledgement of final cause by named witness or authorized custodian. Another page if named witness refuses cause. Entry remains pending." Halden lunged for them. "You cannot understand the opportunity." I understood enough. He had not just offered me to the clerk. He had planned to survive by becoming the man who proved it could be fed. Behind us, Room 9's glass began to crack from inside. One line at a time. The first crack did not sound like breaking glass. It sounded like a pen scratching paper. A thin white line appeared across Room 9's containment case, running from the automaton's ledger to the ceiling. Then another crossed it, then 20 more. The fractures spread inward toward the clerk, not outward toward us, as if the glass were trying to escape its own frame. Priya pulled me back. Amos whispered. The 3 layers collapsed without falling. They folded into themselves, glittering down around the desk like water poured backward. Exhibit 9 rose. It did not lurch or spring. Its movements were careful, almost arthritic. Brass knees straightened beneath its little black coat. Wooden fingers gathered the ledger against its chest with the solemnity of a judge carrying sentence. Its porcelain face remained tilted downward, blank and courteous, except for one eye where ink leaked in a single dark tear. Halden made a sound I had never heard from him before. The clerk stepped from the case. Each foot touched the floor with a soft tap-tap, and every tap changed the museum. Storage shelves slid away. Concrete walls lengthened into narrow aisles. Emergency lights became green-shaded desk lamps. Cabinets rose from the floor in rows, their drawers breathing open and shut. Chairs appeared facing empty counters, the kind found in offices where people wait to be called. The air smelled of ink, dust, and damp wool, like an archive buried beneath a funeral parlor. It was not chasing us. That was the worst part. It merely lifted one finger and pointed down the new corridor. A bell chimed somewhere ahead. Priya gripped my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Do not answer anything," she said. But from behind the nearest counter, a voice that sounded exactly like Mara whispered, "Next." Gallery C should have been a loading room. That night, it had become a ceilingless archive. File tags hung in the air on strings, thousands of them, turning slowly, though no wind moved. Each tag carried a name. Some were old enough for the ink to have browned. Others looked freshly typed. I saw staff I knew, strangers I did not, and one tag that fluttered blank until I looked at it too long. Priya dragged me forward. Server junction is behind that wall. There was no wall anymore. Only cabinets stacked into darkness, drawers sliding open as we passed, offering glimpses of teeth, hospital bans, wedding licenses, photographs with faces scratched out. Behind us, the clerk tapped closer. Tap, tap, tap. The ledger opened in its arms. I saw my name again. Elias Vane. Death by the pen hovered. My mouth filled with answers. Fire suffocation fall. Heart failure. 100 possible deaths crowded my tongue. each one begging to be spoken because fear wants shape. Priya clamped her hand over my mouth before I realized I was whispering. "Do not give it grammar," she hissed. The clerk tilted its porcelain head. Amos stepped away from us. "Amos," I said against Priya's palm. He smiled sadly. "I should have said something years ago." He faced the clerk and drew one breath. "Amos Reed," he shouted. "Death by cardiac rupture, Gallery C." The tag snapped toward him. The clerk's pen jerked across the page, hungry and immediate. Amos staggered as if an invisible hand had reached into his chest and squeezed. Priya screamed his name, but she was already moving. She tore open the junction cabinet and drove Halden's axe into the fiber bundle inside. The lights went white. Every tag fell at once, and Amos hit the floor smiling. The white emergency light did not last. It flickered once, then settled into the dull yellow of backup power. Gallery C returned in pieces, concrete floor, broken cabinets, fallen tags. Amos lying among them with one hand still curled like he was holding a tool. Priya was bleeding from her ear. I could not hear out of my left side. Somewhere beyond the room, the clerk clicked its way through the collapsed aisles, slower now, but not lost. The severed archival feed had confused it, that was all. Confusion was not defeat. I saw Mara's redacted folder where I had dropped it near the junction cabinet. The final page had come loose, folded beneath the photograph of her hand against the glass. I wanted to read it so badly my fingers shook. Instead, I carried it back to room 9. The clerk followed. Without the feed, the museum had stopped rearranging itself, but the air still smelled of ink. Priya stayed behind me with the axe, whispering numbers under her breath to stay conscious. I placed Mara's folder on the little wooden desk inside the ruined case. The clerk stopped. Its porcelain face lifted for the first time. There were no eyes behind the glass sockets, only black writing, lines crossing and recrossing where sight should have been. It reached for the folder with one careful hand. The emergency barrier dropped between us. Fresh glass sealed around it, thick and cloudy. The clerk froze mid-reach, ledger pressed to its chest, finger almost touching Mara's name. Priya and I ran. On the security wall, one monitor still worked. It showed Halden entering the director's elevator. The doors closed. The display above them should have climbed to ground level. Instead, it went down. Sublevel 8, sublevel 12. Then numbers stopped meaning anything. I am recording this from a motel off Route 17, the kind with buzzing lights, thin walls, and a Bible in the drawer no one has opened in years. Priya told me to go to a hospital. I told her I would, then drove until the museum was only a dark shape in my rearview mirror. My left ear still rings. My hands keep cramping. There is dried ink under my fingernails. Though I never touched the ledger, I cannot fill out forms anymore. At the motel desk, the clerk slid a registration card toward me, and I nearly vomited. Name, address, emergency contact, signature. All those little boxes waiting to become doors. So I paid cash and lied. Priya texted once an hour ago. No words. Just a photo taken from inside room 9 after the backup containment sealed. Exhibit 9 is sitting again. The glass is cloudy, but the ledger is visible on the desk. The page is not the one it had been writing before. This one has a heading I have never seen. Pending transfers. Beneath it are lines, hundreds, maybe thousands. Blank names waiting under ruled columns. Except for the newest entry at the bottom, Elias Vane. The ink is still wet, not dry like an old prediction. Wet, shining, alive in the camera flash. The cause of death is written after my name. Death by listener. I do not know whether hearing this counts as witnessing. I do not know whether repeating my name gives it more room to work. But if the clerk needs a record, then this tape is already dangerous. I think that is why my phone keeps ringing, so listen carefully. Do not write it down, do not search for Blackwell. And whatever you do, do not say my name.